probably the most polarising prospect of all at this moment in time.
There's so many players.
Jalen Carter reminds me of him so much.
I don't think he does. James has just gone off picture now. He's on his knees, cursing like this point.
Tell me what he does differently to Darryl Taylor and Nick Ananiwosu.
Yeah, then we can do an opinion afterwards.
Right.
Ladies and gentlemen, Seahawks and football fans everywhere, a very warm welcome back to the We Talk Seahawks podcast. I hope you're all doing well. Hope you all enjoyed the opening instalment of our draft sort of outlook with the offensive weapons that we could potentially be adding to the Seahawks' offense, with the different favourite players we had on offense, different scheme fits, different sleepers, all on the offensive prospects that we could be potentially taking on draft night in just about 10 days from now, I think, at the time of recording, something like that. Tonight, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to switch from the offense to the defense, and we're going to go through again, same kind of thing, favourite players, sleepers, scheme fits, all that good stuff. And I must say a big thank you to everyone who did tune in to the last one. We got a great reaction to it across Spotify and YouTube and everything like that. Great amount of views on it. So we do appreciate you all. So hopefully we're going to produce another very good one tonight for the defensive players. There's a lot to unpack here. Lots of interesting prospects, polarising prospects. A lot of opinions will be flying around the room as always. But I've got my very three special right-hand men with me, as always, because I can't do it on my own. Positive Pez, how are you, mate, as you put me into this disgraceful background?
I thought I've not done it yet.
A bit of a ritual, yeah.
Why?
The ritual, the podcast ritual. Yeah, I'm good, mate. I'm good. Happy to be back. Talk some defense. And Josh has just made it, so we're all good.
He's just beat the deadline. Yeah, good lads. You had a bit of a mad one in the house tonight, Josh, have you?
Yeah, it's been a mad week. It's been half term. I've had my daughter all week. She's just been non-stop. I thought I'd tire her out by this weekend, and then that didn't happen. Took her to a birthday party, and she's just been going and just going and going. It's like a Duracell battery, honestly. But yeah, I'm here now, and I'm glad to be back on the pod. Good.
We missed you last week, and
I missed last week. Great pod, brilliant pod.
Thanks, mate. We really appreciate that. But I'm sure you're going to have a lot of good opinions on this defensive class of players. I know there's definitely a sleeper that you like that I preluded in that previous podcast. So I'm going to give you the floor for that one. But as always, we've got our resident draft expert with us as well, Mitch from our Discord server. Mitch, how are you, mate?
Yeah, very good, mate. Very good.
Good.
Enjoyed a short week at work thanks to the bank holidays. And I am here, refueled and ready to go for another deep dive into the 2023 draft.
Awesome
prospects.
Yeah, let's just go with it, mate. There's no point hanging around. We're going to start with, I think, is probably the most polarizing prospect of all at this moment in time. Yeah, this should be fun, this next 5-10 minutes, as we talk about Jalen Carter, because there's going to be a very mixed opinion I can tell in the room already. I'll say my 2 pence and then I'll offer it to you lads. I do not want Jalen Carter anywhere near the Seattle Seahawks. That's my personal view. I don't want him anywhere near us. I really hope we don't draft him. I'll prelude what I'm going to say by saying that I acknowledge he's an outstanding football player when he's on the field. Nobody has any questions about that at all. I'd be stupid to say otherwise. But I just don't. He hasn't even been drafted, and I've already got a headache over Jalen Carter, and he isn't even in a Seahawks uniform. He isn't even in any uniform in the NFL, and I'm already sick of hearing him and sick of talking about him. But there's a difference, because my main gripe with Jalen Carter is, of course, the incident that has occurred with Jalen Carter, and that's mainly why I don't particularly want him here. And I understand he's a young man. What is he, 21, whatever he is? And young people make mistakes. I'm 23 myself. Trust me. I've started a podcast with these two. I've made a mistake. But there's a difference between making a mistake and a one-off mistake and learning from it. But Jalen Carter, before this tragic accident that claimed the life of a football player at Georgia and a member of staff, 20 and 24 respectively, very young ages. Awful incident. But I don't know if everyone is aware. I wasn't aware before I read into it that Jalen Carter has actually been ticketed before this incident with speeding, and then this incident has occurred, and he's made this mistake again and again. And this isn't, I'm not trying to shit on Jalen Carter here for, again, a very poor lapse in judgment.
But you are.
But I am.
Yeah.
Because and then there's the thing, right, that really winds me up and really turns me off Jalen Carter and would make me question if I was a football player in Seattle's locker room, I don't think I could particularly take this guy under my wing. I'm not sure. And that's the fact that this incident has occurred at well over 100 miles an hour. They've gone off the road and what's happened has happened. But after this incident, when asked by police, Carter lied to the police. He said he wasn't anywhere near the incident at the time. He fled the scene along with someone else in another car, but then retracted his statement and told police that actually he was behind the car, following it in the taillights, knew exactly what had happened and has fled the scene and driven off. So you've got that. And then you've got him turning up to his pro day, oversized. And there's a difference, but I'll say it again, there's a difference between a young man who makes a single mistake and then learns from it. Jalen Carter, all I'm seeing over and over again is a man who keeps making mistakes and is not learning from his mistakes, whether by ignorance or by the fact that he's just refusing to listen to advice and take advice in.
It's very Josh Gordon, isn't it?
It's very Josh Gordon, and I just think all of this has already happened as a 21-year-old who hasn't even stepped foot in the NFL yet. This accident actually occurred just hours after Georgia won the national championship, and that's how he decided to go and celebrate, not with his teammates, by going boy racing through the streets. And I just think this is a young man that, talent aside, I get the talent. He's an extraordinary talent on the field, but we're building an exceptional locker room here, with massively culturally driven. And there's so many other outstanding prospects that we could take at 5 that we'll get onto tonight, that we don't need to take a risk of self-implosion with bringing in someone like a Jalen Carter, in my opinion. And I'm just not sold on his character. I'm not sold on the man that would be bringing. I don't think this is a young man who's particularly
willing to change.
Willing to change is a good way of what I was probably going to try and say, but a lot worse. But yes, willing to change is probably a nice way, a PC way of putting it, Pez. Considering you've said that, Pez, I'll give the floor to you if you want to speak about Jalen Carter.
Yeah. The willing to change thing is my point why I don't like him either. But it's not from the angle what you said. Like, you've got all that, but then add into the player. Take away the talent and take away what he could be. Because apparently, when we drafted Malik McDowell, he was a steal. He was, we've got a guy here. This is the guy we've been waiting for seasons to get our defense going. And what is he? He's a knob. He's a knob. What do you do? All NFL players, all of them, ATVs, not a fucking chance. You don't touch them. So what do I go and do? Clever thing to go and do. Oh, just go into a fucking ATV and destroy my whole career. And you've got a bigger risk with a guy who wins a national championship and his head coach comes out and gets asked, what could Jalen Carter do to improve next year? Because he's like this monster. He's potentially going first overall next year. He's like, what can he actually do to improve his game? Conditioning. He needs to get his conditioning sorted before he goes in the NFL. That's his head coach. Jalen, what do you need to do going into next season to get my conditioning? It's my number one priority this off season. make sure my conditioning. I want to be every down player. I don't want to be struggling with my fitness. I want to be on the field. I want to be using my abilities to help the team, this, that, and the other. Comes into the next season, and he's used for the prospect that he is and the player he is used like you'd use a second or third round player at his position, a rotational piece, not because of his ability, because of his conditioning. Going into the playoffs, the biggest stage in college football to help your team go back-to-back champions, and he can't stay on the field because he's fucked, gassing out of his arse. And anyone who wants to try and push back at me about that, he even chucked himself under the bus by admitting after the game, yeah, I need to get my conditioning sorted. Again, like what you said, doesn't seem to want to change, and a liar. Doesn't seem to want to change anything, and another evidence of him just being a liar. He said it the season before, he's done fuck all about it, so his way of sorting himself out was doing 100-meter sprints from the semi-final to the final. And in the final, from my memory, he was pretty much a non-factor, really. He didn't need to be, granted, didn't need to be. That might have had something to do with it. But nothing, absolutely nothing. And then you get into the combine, and granted, all right, all that stuff happened. But I'm going to put it out there now. Look at it from this angle. If he did what he did in his pro day, how ready was he actually to even contribute in that combine? I think the whole police, what's the word? Giving him a thing where he has
the investigation or the basically a summons, wasn't it?
The summons. So I think the summons kind of covered up the fact that I don't think he was going to do anything in the combine. Because you don't then go to your pro day and refuse to test.
Well, he when he turned up at the combine, he wasn't supposed to run any drills. He was just going there to do his measurements and interviews. So he'd already said he wasn't going to do it. So regardless of whether he got summoned by the police or not, he'd already said he wasn't doing it. So I think like what you were alluding to, he didn't have any intention of
exactly
competing on that level.
Who the fuck does this guy think he is? And then you go into listening to people coming out saying that basically because he was the main guy in Georgia, he turned up to what he wanted when he wanted, and they kind of just let him do what he wanted. And you could tell that. You could see that with his conditioning. Because if that team was on his back, his conditioning would have been a lot better in his final year. Clearly, they just let him do what the fuck he wanted. Like, I don't get it. I do not see it. I don't give a fuck how talented the guy is. Because I've said to you in the Discord, and I will say it again on this podcast, anyone who isn't in our Discord, come join in. Come and tell me I'm wrong. But you see it so many times with these amazing athletes. You come into the NFL with piss poor conditioning when things are going twice the speed, like they all say coming out of college, and you have no conditioning. What happens to a big boy like him is by the time the college season in his body is finished, but then you've still got, as we are making the playoffs, still got 6-7 weeks left. Look what happened to Charles Cross. Look what happened to Abe Lucas. They struggle towards the back end of the year, like they all state, because of that rookie season where your just body isn't used to it because of college. What happens to a guy like him when he's got piss poor conditioning is he gets an injury? And you know what does that to a guy with a mentality of his? He raps and quits. But it's like, it's fine. I'm the fucking 5-star. I'm amazing. No one can touch me. I'll dust this injury off and I'm just going to crack back on. But no, do you know what happens? It just gets worse and worse and worse. And he's that guy who bounces around the league because of his name and his draft status, and he's achieved nothing in his life. Nothing as a player, not met his potential, and that is what I see Jalen Carter being, unless he has a serious wake-up call with himself, and you don't see it happening. You really don't.
That's the thing with me, like say, before I bring Josh and Mitch into it as well, that I just get the impression when I look at him, I know it's a different position, but something like a Johnny Manziel or even a Jadeveon Clowney to a certain extent, these kind of players that come into the draft, all the talent in the world, but not a clue how to handle the attitude side of the game and the discipline, self-discipline side of the game. And it goes wrong. And I'm just getting red flags over and over again that Jalen Carter is going to be the next one, that next big. When we look back in another 10 years, Jalen Carter, it'll be a wasted talent synonymous with the NFL draft. And that's just what I'm getting the impression of. Josh, if we do end up selecting Jalen Carter at 5, are you going to be more cheerful than me and Pez?
I'll be happy. I've people who've sort of been on the Twitter and TikTok and the Discord will know I've flip-flopped on this guy so much purely because I've spoken to Mitch about this at length. So I have a really juxtaposed view on talent over attitude, and his history is saying basically what you two have just said. And like, you know, it's on paper. There's no denying, you know, the misdemeanors, the fact that he's got continued offences, all of that, absolutely fine. His work ethic is in question. You know, his turning up overweight. You know, you have to also just bear in mind that he's going through an awful lot now when it's coming to one of the most stressful points of his young career, where he's going to try and get signed and make millions of dollars, whereas this could really hurt him. So if he's not been training or is put on bad weight, I won't blame him. My issue is we will not pick at 5 for a long old time. And if we pick at 5, I want to get a potential, because let's face it, it's the draft. Anyone can be a bust. Anyone can come in. Anthony Richardson, for all we know, the guy has got metrics off the charts. You know, we all love him. But he could be an absolute bust in the NFL. You know, people like Jameis Winston in college at Florida.
Mm-hmm.
He was exceptional. Coming to the league, bounced from team to team to team, never been able to hold down a starting position. But he was pegged to be the next big thing. I don't want to be in a position as a Seahawks fan picking at 5 where we are so wary over something like this that we pass over someone that could be a generational talent. And when you look at Carter's game tape, he's got it in him to be a generational talent. If he is drafted to the right environment with the right coaching staff and the right players around him, away from Georgia where he is now, he's going to be in a totally different environment. If anyone's been to Seattle, the Pacific Northwest, can tell you. I mean, I've been a fair bit of Florida. I've been to Orlando a lot, so I've got friends there, and I've been to Seattle. It's like night and day. It is so different culturally. It's unreal. So you take a young man out of the Georgia football culture where he is a superstar, he can get away or thinks he can get away with stuff, move him all the way up into the PNW, away from all that shit, with a coaching team of Pete Carroll, players like Bobby Wagner, Quandre Diggs, all of the other veterans that we've got there, Clint Hurt as his coach. And let's face it, Clint Hurt will not be afraid to slap him upside the head if he is a prick. I would not pass it up because I don't personally see anyone else that I'd want to take at 5 defensively. I know you've got a thing for Tyree Wilson, James, and that's fine. I've watched a lot of his tape, and I don't think he's worth a pick that high.
How dare you?
But that's personal preference, mate. That's what the draft is. That's why there's so many different mock drafts coming up. I don't see him being that. When I watch Jalen Carter's tape, I see what he could bring to us. And I think if we picked him at 5, there is a chance that he could be that game wrecker we need. He could be the game changer. Now, there's also a chance that he could be utter shithouse, like Baker Mayfield or Johnny Manziel.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the same for everyone. Now, I'd take that risk.
Just to throw back a question to you with your point is, I totally agree with you, by the way. I agree with the whole, it's a lottery.
We have made progress on this pod so far.
Hang on, he hasn't finished his sentence yet.
Sorry, I'm not finished just yet.
Oh, damn it.
The whole thing you were talking about, I agree with it, completely agree with it, because I think draft position and all that shit, I've said it in numerous pods, this whole, oh, he's only a 7th rounder, so but he's the better fucking player. Just sort yourself out. It doesn't matter if he was 5th overall. He's better. Play him. Stop being a dick over a draft pick. But I just feel like with Jalen Carter, is it not? It's too much of a risk, in my opinion. Like I get that, but a lot of what you said for me was we could, and you had to keep on using the could word because of how bad he's looking at the moment.
But no one's nailed on to be a definite. That's the thing. Trevor Lawrence has gone to a shithouse franchise like the Jags, right? They could not have foreseen him coming in and going after 2 seasons going, shit, he's helping us turn this around, because he could have been a massive bust. There are so many players that are drafted top end. Jadeveon Clowney, right? Number 1, you mentioned him earlier, and look at what he's done now. He's a bust. Now, there's so many players.
Jalen Carter reminds me of him so much.
I don't think he does. I think the personalities are very different. Clowney, I think, is a different player. Mitch, I'm going to let you take over this because I know we've had many conversations.
I'm so keen to jump in, but you've done me a huge
favour.
You've
just got to jump in, Mitch, when this goes down. You've just got to get in there.
When I listened to Pez and James, I was thinking I really don't want to go third here because they've laid out such a shit foundation on top of Jalen Carter. They've all shot.
Just very quickly as well, for people that aren't watching this on YouTube, you can't see the picture that Mitch has on his profile. I'll let you carry on, mate.
Yeah, well, I'm representing Jalen Carter with my avatar here, so I've got to come in hard for Jalen here. So, what I would say, right, and you've all made really solid points, and I think that you've not said anything that everyone else. You've said things that other people maybe haven't considered, but you've certainly nailed all of the negatives, and I think the conditioning side of it is really important too. But what I will say is, everyone always talks about the ceiling for talents. I'm going to tell you that I think the floor for Jalen Carter is outrageously high. And I'll tell you why the floor for Carter is really high. We desperately need a nose, right? He's played nose in a 3. He's played as a defensive tackle, attacking the A gap either side of the guard in a 3. He's played the edge. He's set the edge in a 5 tech. He's set the edge in a 4. He's played as a defensive tackle in a 4. If you draft a guy that you can just say, look, year 1, you're our nose tackle. We really need a nose. Just batter the center. When you're on the pitch, just batter the center. Don't allow anyone to double team Draymond Jones or Jaron Reed. Don't let anyone double team them. Just occupy the center. Give him the hardest game of his life. That is his flaw. That is the worst he can be for us. Is just an absolute monster harassing centers all season. And if you put him in,
just a quick question on that. What happens when Big Baby turns around and goes, I don't want to play nose?
No, he's played nose in college.
I don't care.
It's not a new. It's not a new.
We're trying to do a character assassination of a man that we've never met, and all we have is news stories to go off. So, yeah, I said, you move him somewhere else, and it could be completely different. Go on, carry on, Mitch.
You could get that from a corner. You could get a corner put in the slot because someone sees him as a slot or a safety, and they could throw the toys out. I think Jalen Carter, whether we put him as a rotational piece, whether he plays as a tackle in a 3-man front, or whether he plays as a nose, he's going to be way better than most rookie tackles. It's a solid starting point, and that's his flaw. The ceiling on him, everyone knows, is unbelievable. If the character flaws get ironed out, if
he can put the pies down.
If he could put the pies down. I mean, he doesn't have to put all the pies down, especially if he goes nose. If anything, that's a golden ticket to put another 20 on if he wants, But I just think Jalen. Josh said something which I hadn't thought of actually, and I respect the take on it. We may not pick in the top 5 for another 20 years, and if we don't shoot for the stars when we have the chance to do it, we'll regret it. We'll regret it if we pick him and we get it wrong, but we'll regret it even more if we don't pick him and he absolutely becomes that generational talent. So he's not necessarily
someone trades up and then takes him. And then
And
in
they
5
smash
years' time, we're going, for fuck's sake. And when the
Without-
Seahawks track apart.
Yeah.
To be fair, though, I'll contradict myself here. And my dream of us winning the Super Bowl, Jalen Carter was the defensive player of the game. So
Yeah, I do think there's some things with Jalen Carter which you just can't overlook. That flexibility across the line and the bottom, the bottom line there being that he would be he'd be the best nose in the league, I think.
we're not having it next. Get rid of him.
I could just see James. He looked more and more incensed as you and I were talking, Mitch. I could see his jaw clenching. There was a bead of sweat. He's got like a shiny brow now, where you can see the sweats form, where he's just trying to hold in the anger and the rage.
That's the face he normally pulls at me.
But
you've come to know it, son. Without the need and without the want, trust me, it's without the want for this to become the Jalen Carter podcast. We'll end it here and move on to some other prospects, who don't lie to police. Basically, for me, as much as you say Jalen Carter, you can't overlook the talent on the field. I get it. Look, I get, but nothing you've said, Josh and Mitch. You've just said this. I agree with everything you said. Yes, I know the talent is amazing. I get it. But you also, at the same point, can't overlook the red flags. And for me, look how he's behaving in a program where he's just been winning. That's all he's been doing, just winning at Georgia. You bring him into the NFL, you bring him into Seattle, where we're not quite ready to win at the level that he's been winning at in terms of a national championship level, which would correlate to a Super Bowl level. How is he going to behave and act in a program that isn't winning at that level?
Well, James, we all of us with our psychology degrees that can read people like books, we'll be able to dissect exactly what his character is. We don't know, mate. This is it. Everyone's forming opinions on what's happened, but we don't know the inside track on it. So let's just move on.
Yeah,
Jalen Carter, bookend done. Who's next?
Who's next? Marzi doesn't lie to police. Smith is next. Nose tackle out of Michigan. I mean, for me, he's a perfect nose tackle that you don't need to take with all the baggage of Jalen Carter. And is already, Marzi Smith is for me about as good a scheme fit as we could hope to find as a nose tackle. I absolutely love him, and I think he'd be an ideal. I wouldn't be that happy if we took him at 20. I think that'd be value-wise in the draft. I think we could maybe try and get him further to the back end of the first if we do trade back. But look, the Seahawks might be. I mean, we haven't visited with him yet, but they might be infatuated with him. I don't know when they might take him. I'm not going to be unhappy if we take Marzi Smith in the first.
James.
Yes.
You mentioned about police stuff when you started with Marzi.
Oh, don't tell me Marzi Smith's been arrested. Don't tell me. 2022
for weapons charges. Do you want to retract it or?
That bit's being edited out of the pod, isn't it? Oh, Jimbo, do your research, mate.
Oh, you're the guy who reads.
What we should be doing here, what we should really be doing. James has just gone off picture now. Curses on his knees, cursing like this, going, no! This is why I think what we should be doing is just mentioning names of prospects, letting Mitch just tell us about them, and then we can do an opinion afterwards.
Right. I'm going to take over this. I'm going to save James. So Marzi Smith for me is when James said I wouldn't like to take him at 20. I think for me that is the one negative I have on him personally. Is I think if you want him, you're going to have to take him at 20 because it's a very small nose class of just like specific talent at nose. He's the top guy. He's the number one freak. And
welcome back, James.
And I think he's just going to go. I just think he's going to go far too early with his Uzi in hand. And I did do Steve Gun fingers on the video. Look forward to that. But a quick sidestep to him is that Ika, if I say his name right, Ika. Now, I said this before we came on air. Came on air. Look at me sounding like I'm professional. Fucking came on air. Getting good at this thing. The difference between them two is, he's almost like a sleeper for me at the position, because looking at his strengths to his weaknesses, I think teams might pass up on him and try and do the route of getting a D tackle who's big enough and put him at nose with some of the higher upside. Whereas I think if we have a good chance of maybe, if Marzi does go high, leave him, let him go, focus on Ika, but get Al Woods back. So I said it to James and Mitch before you came on, Josh, is my thought process looking into it is, I think he'd do really well sitting behind Al Woods for a year. We know Al Woods can still do it. Had a really good year last year. If we can make it happen, bring Al Woods in, look after him, let him learn off Al, because some of his weaknesses is what Al Woods really good at. Get that experienced head, get his conditioning up, get him to fill his frame, get him comfortable in his frame. And then by that point, Al Woods is probably like one last payday, sound, and then let him loose fully next year. That is my little side step.
Woods is still on the market. He's had an offer from Cleveland and he's told him to hold fire. So he might be waiting for the Seahawks to come back once we jiggle some draft capital around. But before I talk about Marzi Smith, I'll let Mitch go first, because he's probably going to say a lot of the things that I already think.
I mean, I can go through his rap sheet if you like, James.
Please don't, Mitch. My career is over. What do I do now?
I say a couple of things about Marzi Smith. He's someone I'm really, really high on. If whether we take Carter or not, I love putting Marzi Smith in there. Phenomenally strong, an absolute freak. The stuff that you can watch and read about his physical strength is unbelievable.
Ridiculous.
So I really do like him, and it screams of, this is what Jalen Carter could do in the gym if he just put the work in. You know, the conditioning and the effort and the work rate and the motivation. You know, you can see it coming off Marzi Smith, and then with Jalen Carter, it looks like a guy who's got natural gifts that are untapped. So that I love about him. I see him as a guy that he looks amazing now, but with that motivation, the right coaches, the right environment, the right scheme, this guy's a world beater. Honestly, unbelievable player. So that's my take on it. The in your defence, James, you mentioned about lying to police. He did admit that and give up the weapon. So
good lad.
It was a misdemeanor, and he's obviously a good bloke. But like Pez said, had an Uzi in his in his glove box or something. So yeah, there you go. That's my 2p worth on.
Hey, get Frank Clark back in. Get Marzi in.
Oh my God, mate! Just turn it
into
the meme machine. This is basically it's going to turn into like the longest yard part 2. This
we'll have to change our uniforms to like the Browns uniforms.
I'm basically, I like Marzi Smith. I think for any man that big to test athletically the way he has, I mean, barring his misdemeanor, as Mitch did say, I just don't want to rub that in, James. But
don't worry, it's been rubbed in. That ship is
Mitch isn't coming back on the podcast now.
Yeah, but I mean, I'd be all about him being a nose tackle. My issue is, I think 20 is reaching too high for him. I think he's going to fall just after that, and he's going to fall in between 20 and our next pick. And that is where I don't want to reach too high for a nose tackle who I don't think is worth the 20. I don't think he'll be graded that high on our boards. And that's my only reservation. I'd love, if we got him in the second round, I would be all over that, because the guy's a freak. He could start at nose for us straight away, problem solved. And then all he's got to do is learn our system. He's already got the athletic gifts, as Mitch said, for a man that big to be able to push, pull, run and jump the way he does is ridiculous. And that is something you can work with, because you can teach people a scheme, you can teach people how to work in an organization, but you can't teach them how to have a good work ethic from the off. So
yeah, has anyone got any sleepers in the interior of the defensive line before we get to the edge guys on the perimeter?
Yes,
I'll just quickly throw 2 up. I don't need to I like them. Not really watch much of them. I don't know, like, it's just probably positive Pez vibe. But the 2 D linemen from Texas, I didn't want to say it because I can't say his name. Ojomo?
Ajomo, yeah.
Yeah, I got it right.
Yeah.
Get in there. Well done, Pez. You're not a thick idiot after all. And who's the other one? Colburn.
Yeah, Keandre Coburn, yeah.
Yeah, like them too. Just read him, look at him, think, ooh, hello.
Hello.
I've got one that I would put down as a really late round developmental tackle, and that's Jonathan Vi from San Diego State. Now, I think there's a lot that needs to be done physically with him, but last season alone, 10.5 sacks, 59 tackles, and 31 solo tackles out of them. For a D tackle to be getting to a quarterback 10.5 times, that for me shows promise. I think that there are. Mitch is probably going to tell me that there's something drastically wrong here.
No.
But everything I've seen
Kill
of him,
3 people.
Just 3.
This is the convicts pod. Everything I've seen from him, just it screams that he can be that late round pick that you can get. You don't have to hang your hat on and be like he's starting day one. You can just develop him into a really good rotational piece who will be able to do stuff when he comes on. He's my sleeper. I put it on the TikTok a few weeks ago for D-line. I don't know if my other boy should be down as D-line or edge, so I'm going to keep him for edge.
Keep him for
edge.
I do have another one from the last pod. I did come up with an idea after we finished recording, was because our new D-line coach is Michigan State, so he kind of has an inside scoop on them players, Josh. And I thought, who's coming in this year? Because we could get like a little sleeper there, just for us as a team. And there is one, a D tackle, Jacob Sled. And he's projected to go 7th, undrafted kind of thing. And I'm thinking, if he goes undrafted, could our coach be able to pull him in? Because I go off NFL Draft Buzz. I just kept all my stuff on there, so I'm not getting too mixed up different things. His measurables, his hands and his weight are a concern, but his 40, his shuttle, his broad jump, his vertical, his 3-cone, his span, his arm span, and his arms are all medium to high. So I looked at that. It's for like a 7th round undrafted guy. His pass rush run defense is 78%, 88%, like according to their metrics. And this, you'll love this. First thing on his strengths, strong tackler. So
bring him in. Just bring him in.
And I just think, undrafted, why not? Because I just had a thought. I thought, like, what defensive guys are Michigan State bringing out? Because can he give Pete the inside scoop, saying this guy is better than what people think?
Just undrafted, chuck him in, and then put him on the practice squad.
Yeah.
Potentially that someone will nick him, but
rotational piece.
Stash him there, exactly.
Just rotational piece, keep him stashed.
Yeah.
So for everyone listening, if you've not done it, Jacob Sled.
Mitch, you got a sleeper?
Yeah, I won't go into too much detail because I know we need to move on to edges. I'm just going to give a shout out to Cameron Young, who's a nose tackle again. We talked a lot about them, but it is a major position of need. 6'3", 304 pounds, 6th round projection, peaked this year, projected at 5th round. So he's always been towards the bottom end. He has got his flaws, but he's got a really uncanny knack of penetrating at the line. He's got a couple of pass rush moves, pretty consistent. But some of his physicals and athleticism not great. When he does penetrate the line, he causes havoc, but he doesn't necessarily get to the quarterback. So a guy there who could really run stuff for us, could be a cheap pickup at the back end, and we have interviewed him twice as well. So I think we're looking at him as some value at the end. Cameron Young, Mississippi.
Like it.
Gosh.
Right, let's get to the perimeter of this defensive line with the edge guys. I'll start with my favourite guy, and it's always been through this progress, I should say, prospect. Tyree Wilson. You what,
Process.
What did I say?
You said progress. He said the wrong word.
You're not on your game today, are
I'll
you?
level with you boys. Marzi Smith has fucking thrown my word into the cloud. Fucking hate that lad now. I hope he doesn't come here either.
See, Mitch, he relies on me and Josh being very just unprepared shooting at the hip. He doesn't need you coming in with your technical.
Shooting at the hip. Well done, Pez. Keep rubbing it in, son. Dear me. Right. Tyree Wilson. I'm crossing all my fingers when I say this. Doesn't have a criminal record.
Mitch?
Can play. Yeah, Mitch, you get on that whilst you're in the police.
No. He is a choir boy.
Lovely.
In terms of criminal records, I'm sure.
Well, he could be the angel that we're looking out for then, because this guy is a freak, absolute freak, 6'6", 271 pounds. I mean, his measurables just test absolutely off the charts, and the production is there as well. I think obviously he's more of an edge rusher. He can play a linebacker. He's slotted into like outside linebacker spots before, but I think if you're bringing him here, I think you line him up as an edge rusher for me purely. I'm more in the camp of if we're wanting to take an outside linebacker at 5 and Will Anderson and Tyree Wilson are both there. You want the linebacker, you take Will Anderson. You want the pass rusher, you take Tyree Wilson. That's just my opinion. But I mean, I don't need to get.
Will Anderson's pass rushing grade is miles higher, surely.
Right. Just let him go. Let
me go. No, it's a good point, and look, people might think Will Anderson is a good pass rusher, yeah. But for me, he over relies far too much on the speed rush. For me, he's got a great first step, and the speed rush is good, yeah. But for me, aside from that, once he steps into the NFL world, that isn't going to work. It'll still work. The speed rush will still work, but it isn't going to work at the rate that it was working in college. So when it inevitably doesn't work and big offensive tackles and good offensive tackles begin to start figuring out the speed rush, what else has he got in his arsenal? For me, he hasn't got anything else really in terms of pass rushing moves at this point in his career. I think he's a much better box outside linebacker, Sam linebacker, who plays the run, can send him on blitz packages like a Jamal Adams. For me, he's a real comp to a Jamal Adams kind of guy for me, and we all scream about Jamal Adams playing linebacker. So I think he's perfect in that role, whereas Tyree Wilson is just the freak pass rushing prospect for me in terms of, yes, again, he doesn't have a refined arsenal of moves at this point. Again, he probably over relies on the power at times rather than the finesse moves, but I can see him adding those to his arsenal a lot easier than maybe Will Anderson will. So he's my edge one. Like I say, if we don't trade back at 5 and we want the pass rusher, I hope they take Tyree Wilson. If they want the linebacker, I'll be equally as happy with Will Anderson as I would be happy with Tyree Wilson. But that would only be the case if we're drafting Will Anderson to play outside linebacker. That's my point that I'm getting at. Pez, any thoughts on those two guys or anyone else on the defensive end?
Yeah, I'm glad you put them together because they're the names that keep coming up in Seahawks, like draft land. And personally, I love aggressive, like just big, hard-hitting, aggressive people. Tyree Wilson ticks all my boxes. Now, looking at Will Anderson and Tyree Wilson, two different kind of body types, but they both have, in a way, similar negatives. Like weaknesses, should we say, not negatives, but weaknesses coming into the league. The main one is the moves. Is the moves on the edge. Like, they've not got a lot of variety. Like, Tyree Wilson's got his strength, his power, his size. That gets struck down. He then will struggle. Like, he'll struggle with his change of direction, and because of his size and stuff, it makes him a bit more tighter. But for me, it goes back to, I've said it in like our Discord a lot, and I've said it probably on here before, but for me with Will Anderson, every time I look at him, the thing that comes in the back of my head is, tell me what he does differently to Darryl Taylor and Nichan Nwosu. I don't want a third guy who does the same. I've watched 3 different highlight tapes of his through college, since he's in college. they don't settle my like concerns about the player. It's like, okay, like whether I'm looking at it from a completely wrong angle and he is the second coming of Jesus and just makes things disappear in front of him, it's like, that was easy. That was easy. That was easy. Who was even blocking him? What the fuck's going on there? What is all this? And that might be great. But coming to the NFL, when you're not playing against old linemen who are kids and you're playing against men who have been in the league 10, 15 years, like a Dwayne Brown, for example, Dwayne Brown's not just going to magically disappear and give you just an open door to the backfield. And a lot of his highlights of his splashy plays are just open doors to the backfield, 3 as a day. You don't see him doing much to create it.
Yeah, because he doesn't need to. Because instead of the speed rushing, he hangs back. So one thing I've noticed from that is that when he breaks through these gaps, he's actually hanging back. So he waits for a gap to form, and that's where he shoots through.
Correct.
See,
so it's intelligent football.
Yeah, fair enough. Mitch said the same. Mitch said it about Tyree Wilson as well. But it's intelligent until, like James said, and this is again a negative on both of them, until it gets figured out. And when they do that, week 1, week 2, week 3, week 4 comes, and that gets shut down. What do they do next? And for me, Will Anderson is he's in the bracket of what Darryl Taylor and Nwosu do. Tyree Wilson brings something a little bit different because of his size and his strength. And it's just about having.
Carlos done that at length, but he couldn't play outside linebacker. He couldn't drop for shit. So it's just going to be a Carlos Dunlap 2.0. That's my personal opinion. Tyree Wilson. All he's going to do is...
Yeah, but what I'm talking about, I want variety on the line. I don't need Carlos Dunlap. I don't need him dropping back and doing anything fancy. I just want variety on the line. Look what happened to us last year. Darryl Taylor and Nwosu, in my opinion, are very similar in the way they play. And we went through a big stretch where Nwosu was playing class. They got figured out. The interior was not helping. And what happened to him? He might as well have been on a deck chair on the sideline doing fuck all. That is my biggest concern with bringing in Will Anderson to play with them two, is you're just going to then have 3 people the same. So then if the people in the interior aren't doing their job, and it might not be a knock so much on Will Anderson as a player. I'm not knocking that. It's a bit like the Jalen Carter situation. You're not knocking the talent of the player. I'm not knocking him as a player. I'm just, our personal situation, I want variety. I want people on that line who can bring different things to the party. So do you know, like when Nwosu is having his last year slump and he's not getting to the quarterback as 3 because teams are shutting his moves down, then Tyree Wilson will bring a different element to make teams go, okay, we have multiple guys doing different types of things to attack us. Because that's what we all said on this podcast multiple times. We have nothing. We have nothing on the line. We have no special moves. We don't have anything to get through these lines. And it's killing us. And that's
sorry, Pez.
It's a variety.
Mitch, what's your thoughts on the Will Anderson, Tyree Wilson debate? Are you in one camp or the other, or would you be happy with either of them?
I'm happy with either. I wouldn't be picking Tyree Wilson at 5 if Anderson's gone and we're not going Jalen Carter. I think we're looking for a trade back. If there's no trade back, I'll take Tyree at 5, but that wouldn't be my favorite thing to do. I do really like him. My problem with Tyree Wilson is we have our Tyree Wilson for next year in Draymond Jones, and the reason they want Draymond Jones is they want a long, rangy edge rusher that can play with leverage with long levers, because with our 3-man front, they're trying to pin down the guard and the centers and force them to double team and clog up the middle because we're hitting them with a nose tackle and 2 DTs, which puts the tackles on an island, and you rush a safety or an edge rusher from the linebackers on one side, and then you go with the one defensive end that's rangy and long to leverage inside between the guard and the tackle. So Tyree Wilson's the best fit that we can find in the draft, apart from maybe someone like Zach Harrison, who I'll try and talk about later. But but we have that, is what I'm trying to say. We have a guy that's long and rangy, so I'd take him on a talent basis at 7, 8, 9 if he's there, but I wouldn't be reaching for him at 5.
Just to jump in quickly, not to like cut Josh off. With what you've just said there with the length, obviously Tyree Wilson does have that, but with what you just explained, then surely Miles Murphy fits.
Yeah, he does.
Probably better than the other two.
Well, interestingly, Miles Murphy's an even better fit in some ways because of his weight as well. He could play as one of the DTs in the centre and take on a man. Because if you play him in the centre and use his power and his speed and attack the A gaps either side of the guard and the guards in the centre, if you do that, he needs double teaming. He absolutely needs double teaming, which you can't do if the nose is occupying the centre. So he would be able to play alongside Draymond Jones as well, Murphy. So you could have him as a rotational piece in 2 spots.
And he's number 3 freak as well.
Yeah. He's phenomenal. So again, you're right. Really, really good scheme fit, Miles Murphy, but just doesn't have that. What were the concerns with him? Was it his overall production, inconsistent production?
His rush production, but surely would you not just solely look at him as a disruptor?
I look at him as a versatile disruptor on the D line that could play multiple spots. I think that he's worth somewhere between 20 to 30 for most teams for that role, I would say.
I took him in there for Josh.
Maybe higher.
So then he got all 3 to fucking have a party with. But he at the start he was my pick just in the basis of it. You kind of solidified it with your technical explanations of everything, but I just think with what we've got already there, I just want a disruptor. Because then when Jamal comes back, if they're going to use him like everyone thinks they're going to use him, surely if you've got a disruptor on one side of the line causing just mayhem with the O-line, then that's just going to give Jamal even more freedom to just go attack the other side because it's going to be weak. What do you reckon, Josh?
So, my favourite edge in this class, apart from my sleeper that we'll go on to, is Anderson by far. So you say you want a disruptor. Now, Anderson garners so much attention in college because he is that. He's such a disruptive and destructive force. If we were to put him on one side of our edge, and let's bear in mind, so we're talking about this draft like it's a 1-year deal. We're drafting players for the future. We have them for 4 years with a 5th-year option to draft in the first. Darrell Taylor, I think, is in his last year of his rookie contract this season, isn't he? So there's no guarantee that he's good. I don't think he's signed an extension, has he? Double check, but I don't think he has. So if that's the case, there's no saying that he's going to come back. And Wosu, he's only got a 2-year contract. Last year of his contract. No saying he's going to come back because someone else could offer him a shit ton of money and he could go. So we need to be looking at the future, which is what John Schneider's trying to do with all these drafts. Someone like Will Anderson, if this year Pez said, obviously he's got one move, but I think he's got more. If one move doesn't work, any professional is then going to start working on and honing their craft, which means Will Anderson will be given more and more tools. He's already blue chip. He's already up here compared to everyone else, which just means he's going to improve. So I think, as we said earlier about Jalen Carter's floor, I think Anderson's floor is really high as well. His ceiling is phenomenal, in my opinion. Wilson, I just see him, like I said, I see him as a Carlos Dunlap 2.0. He's long and rangy, brilliant. I see him getting round the tackles with a lot of speed. He's got a lot of flexibility in his hips. But again, I can't see him dropping back. I don't think it'll work. He's not really asked to do it in college that much. And what I have seen, if he does have to do it, doesn't look too great. Miles Murphy, I had leapfrogging him in my board because I think he offers more. I think he's a more well-rounded player. I think when you look at the way in which he attacks gaps, it's more intelligent as well. He requires that double team. I just think Anderson's going to be our best bet. If Anderson's there, I can guarantee we'll take him over Carter at 5. I'd put
like
money
that.
on that.
I'd like that.
I would put money on that that's where Carter's misdemeanors and his history are really going to weigh heavy. Because if you're going to have a blue chip talent versus a blue chip talent, the things you're going to be looking for is right. We interview them, we speak to them, they're both fine. But then you start digging deeper, and then you just see Carter's draft stock just start sinking. And this is where we'll take someone like Anderson, because he is a disruptor. He will garner so much attention from offensive lines because they'll know exactly what he did. They'll know where we drafted him and why we drafted him. I think Tyree Wilson's just a reach, much like Mitch said. If we drop back to 7 or 8, I'd take him, but I wouldn't take him at 5. Save for Miles Murphy, I'd be comfortable taking him around about the 7 or 8 mark as well.
Do you know, you are right, Josh, in a sense of, I'll contradict in what I just said there with Will Anderson, because I love to prepare before I start opening my mouth. Darryl Taylor and Nwosu both run out of contracts in 2024. So I kind of contradict my whole thing on Will Anderson, but because I'm stubborn and proud, Miles Murphy all the way.
Can I add one thing? I know we probably need to move on, but I just want to add one thing. I think it was Bucky Brooks that said it on the path to the draft this weekend. I thought we'd probably end up talking about this, so it's kind of fed in quite well. His take on the difference between Tyree Wilson and Will Anderson for us was that players come out of Alabama coached within an inch of their lives. So when you see a guy as well polished as that coming out of Alabama, which is as good as any college in American football, what you see is what you're likely to get for the first few years of a rookie contract. That's what you're getting from Will Anderson. Tyree Wilson has come out of Texas Tech, right? The Red Raiders. Just raw. He's projected so close to the top 5. He's a 5 to 8 sort of projection, and he's raw. You've no idea what he's going to look like in year 1, 2, and 3. So just something for food for thought there.
And that's what excites me, Mitch. That's what excites me. I love the rawness. Anyway, sleepers. I know you've got one, Josh.
We've also got some members of our Discord that have asked us to discuss a few people, so I'll fire these off to Mitch, if that's all right.
Okay.
We missed Jacqueline Roy from our defensive tackles, so this was from Ledio. Just we'll circle back to that one, but edges, he had Nick Hampton and my boy, but I'll have a talk about my boy. But Nick Hampton, can you give us any insight on that?
I can't really on Hampton because, being completely honest with you, he's not someone who's particularly on my radar.
He's at Appalachian State, so he's not on anyone's radar.
No, he's not. He's not really. Let me pull up his profile. I mean, I don't know.
Whilst Mitch is having a quick look at that, I've got a sleeper who me and I know Mitch is a fan of. But I think the one I like, I watched him in Dublin last year when he was Northwestern were playing over there, and he looked like the announcer his name was being called constantly and all the time for just his production. And it's that, I'm not going to try and say his full name, but it's that Addy everyone calls him just because his name's chaotic. But I love the fact that the Seahawks, I love the read up on him. I watched him in person, watched his highlights. Senior ball guy. I think another freaks list guy. Just love them freaks. I want us to get one. But it's his tackling what could be an issue. But I said it to these two, Josh, whilst Mitch is having a look into that player. Get your opinion. We'll have to do this for a pod in the off season, but we need to. My thing was this new coach we've got. He's got a list of players, right? His list of the players he's worked with are stellar. But it's understanding when did he get them players, what time of their career, and did he actually do anything with them? Because a lot of these edge and D-line players I've noticed when I've just looked through is they've all pretty much got similar weaknesses and measurables that are on the lower side of it. And I was just interested to see, his tackling. Could we be looking at him going, oh no, we don't want that because of last year we got gashed by the run and we need good tacklers, but could we potentially be overlooking a draft player because of a weakness? What this new coach would be like, well, tackling's my bag. I am a god at sorting a player out. Like, who did he have? He had a Bosa, didn't he? Was it a Bosa or a Watt? TJ Watt? That coach. I think it was a Watt or a Bosa, and you look at them and you're like, so when did he get to coach them, and what did he help them with in their job? And I think it'll be a really good thing for us to do.
Tackling is something that can be coached. So there are certain things that can't be coached. When I say raw athleticism, so when you think about just normal everyday stuff, what do you do every day? You walk, you run, you use your intelligence, you use your peripheral vision, basic sort of strength, that type of thing. If you are a freak and you are naturally fast, strong, with fantastic peripheral vision, and your capacity to learn and digest and diagnose things is your IQ's up here, doesn't need to be coached. Things like tackling, you do not tackle every day. Tackling is a coachable skill. It's something that people that learn to play a contact sport have to be taught how to do. Somehow, in the last couple of seasons, we appear to have forgotten how to coach it. That, or they've had incorrect coaching where people haven't listened or taken it on board. I would take a player based on raw athleticism and skill. Like I said, I can coach someone how to play a sport. I used to coach fresh people in rugby how to play rugby, but I can't coach someone to run 100 meters in 10 seconds or sub. That's just it. In my mind, that's like inhuman. That's just natural. That's fine. You can do that. Brilliant. Let me teach you how to tackle, how to run, how to pass, anything like that. How to pass, with a rugby ball. If you have someone like Adi, I will try his name. It's Adetomiwa Adebawore.
Correct.
Sorry,
Good effort.
Sounds about right.
God,
Adebawore is correct.
Yes, there we go. Well, we got the surname right. But yeah, if you've got someone with those freak measurables and you literally look at his tape and go, his tackle technique's a bit off, you get a specialist tackling coach or defensive coach in to work on that. We're a bit restricted by the fact we can't have full contact drills, but you do a lot of bag work. You create muscle memory on how they tackle in different situations, and it should be that easy to rectify. But we seem to have missed the boat on how easy it is. But I'd be with you on that. I've looked at a lot of stuff on him. He's very high on Rob Statton's list. I know that much, and I'd be well happy with that pick.
And he's a Senior Bowl guy, and the Seahawks have interviewed him at the Senior Bowl, at the Combine, and also had him in. So they clearly want him.
Jim
He was the
Nagy's
first guy we spoke to as well.
Yeah, Jim Nagy's definitely had a word in someone's ear and gone, this guy is good. Because that's why you look at how many players we get from the Senior Bowl. It's because we've got those ties with Jim Nagy.
So that's what I was getting at. Like, it is like, what does this new coach bring technique-wise? What's going to help our D-line? Like, with the list of players he's had under his coaching, it's like, it'd be good to just like deep dive into it and see, like, because then it might give us an even bigger opening to these D linemen, like, for example, weak tackler, or a guy you looked at and gone, yeah, but he's not going to suit us because his weaknesses are this and this, whereas this new coach could be the guy. So
any coach worth their salt should look at someone and go, I can coach that, I can make him a better player. If they look at it and go, oh, that's a bit too much for me, you're like, well, why the fuck are you being paid millions of dollars? Like, I'd look at any prospect that came to me. If they have the raw talent, I'd go, I can coach you to do the rest. Give me a few weeks, give me a few months. I can teach you the basics and we'll refine it. Not a problem. These people have been playing football for years.
They're talking about coachable. I've got this guy here called Nick Hampton. So Nick Hampton, I'm not going to pretend I've watched tape. I've not. I'm just looking at his measurables, where his strengths lie and where his projection is. So this is a guy projected to go in the 6th round. He made the freaks list based upon just speed and wingspan.
Sign him up.
But he's flawed. He's flawed apparently with very inconsistent pressure off the edge. He's quite a light guy as well, so it might be one of those guys who gets by in college based on just being a bigger, quicker guy. But then, like Josh says, if you've got a coach worth his salt, hand him a 6'2", 236.
Mold that.
Go wild.
You generally, as a coach, you'd be salivating at some of these. If someone went, we want to take this guy, you'd be like, right, okay, let me have a look at his tape. Be like, right, these are his weak points. These are the bits that I can coach into him. Get him, and I will turn him into a stud because he's got all the fundamentals.
The thing that they do
like
say here,
though. Inconsistent.
I was going to say, Pez, the one thing that does jump out here when you read the profile for him, they say that he drops back because he plays the edge from the line, as an off the ball linebacker, and they say that with his range and his speed, he drops into coverage really well. So maybe there is some.
I take him just for that because we struggle so long with that.
The inconsistent.
I take him just do that job.
Inconsistent pressure. Maybe he makes a good. They say he shoots the gap really well with quickness and leverage. So maybe he's a Jamal Adams backup, maybe a convert to safety, maybe someone who can play as a box safety and rush from there. Maybe. Especially if he can do coverage as well.
What's his round projection?
6th. Oh,
I take that.
Yeah.
For everything you just said there and what it sounds like, I take him in the 6th all day of the week.
Yeah, his wingspan's like 93
like a fucking pterodactyl.
Percentile as a 6'2" guy as well.
That's it now. He's the pterodactyl.
Yeah, I like the look of him as a 6th, 7th round. If we've not picked up that rangy edge earlier on.
6th round pterodactyl.
Yeah, I like it. So, Josh, your guy.
We're desperate to talk about this guy, so I can't help but bang on about him. So every now and again you come across someone, you think, oh, I'll have a look at that. I've picked him up in a really late round in a fantasy draft. I just want to watch some more. Now, I watched this man from San Jose State with the filthiest spin move off a tackle or guard to get to a QB, and I had a draft crush instantly. Viliami Fehoko. Now, this man comes from a football family. I think they're one of his cousins or his brothers is currently in the league. I think his dad played in the league. He's got another cousin in the league. He is D-line edge, so he could fit into a 3-4 quite easily. We could put him at 3-tech and just let him go. Alternatively, we could have him there because he's a slightly bigger body as a bull rusher. And then just let him try and spin off people. Now, what really drew me to him was not the fact that he got 9 sacks last season, or 2 forced fumbles, or 41 solo tackles, 69 combined. It was purely the fact that when you see the variety of ways in which he beats the O-line to get to the quarterback, not always hitting, but putting that pressure on, I thought if you get him in a late round and just have him in a rotation, and let him do his bit. Like Pez said, he wants a game changer. He wants someone with a different move set to get around a tackle. Now, I'm pretty sure I've put his highlights in the Discord for people to watch. If you've seen that spin, he does it either way. He can win with his hands. I think his footwork sometimes is a little bit iffy. And his hips are a little bit rigid. But apart from that, I absolutely love what I saw as a late round guy. I think he's projected 5th or 6th. I did see one mock where he was up at 4th. But I'd love to take him sort of back end. If you went day 3 on him, I'd be ecstatic.
Yeah, his stock is certainly starting to rise since your TikTok on him, Josh. So well done. I think he'll be having you to thank when he goes in the 2nd round come draft night.
Well, if he comes on for an interview, I'll be well happy.
Yeah, there you go then. I'll chuck mine out there before we get to the linebackers. Mohamoud Diabate out of Utah. I think he's absolutely excellent as a 7th round pick. Spent the first 3 years at Florida, and then he spent last year as Utah youth transferring. If you watch him, his tackling is immense. He can play a linebacker or the edge. He got about 5 or 7 sacks last year as an edge at Utah. You won't find many better players in the 7th round as an edge linebacker prospect that are ready to come in and contribute now and play at a good level. If you can get them in the 7th round, I think he'll go before that come draft night. I think his stock will start rising in the next week or so, and I think he'll actually go 5th or 6th round. But I think if we can get him in anywhere between the 5th and 7th round, Mohamed Diabate is definitely my sleeper as a linebacker / edge, more of an edge for me, but that's why I'm bringing him up here and not linebacker.
I was gonna talk about him in linebackers, you know.
Were you?
Yeah, me and Mitch had a conversation about him a couple of weeks ago, and I just read about him, like the Pro Football Network. If anyone's listening and they don't know much about these players or don't know where to start with a draft, Pro Football Network's Draft Simulator, they do a really good thing where on each player you can click on them and it just gives you a little caption of what they're good at. And sometimes it's just the best thing to do is just see what they're good at and think, oh, I like the sound of that. And then just go on YouTube them. Because sometimes you can get into the weaknesses on these players, but sometimes it don't fucking matter. Like Josh has literally just said for you all to listen to. He's a coach, coaches rugby. Sometimes them weaknesses are so coachable. Like you said, look at the measurables. If some of the body measurables are a bit low, then just be concerned. But just concentrate on what did he do good. Do you reckon that'll be a good Seahawk? And just roll with that. Because
this is where you look at traits in the later rounds. So that's typically what NFL Seahawks especially just look at traits. In the first couple of rounds, you look at what's near enough a finished article, an unpolished gem. Further down the line, you just look at traits that are coachable because they don't need to be day one starters. They need to be rotational pieces where you can iron out the creases and just make them better and better and better. And there are so many players out there. Another sleeper, I'll just drop his name in there. Jose Ramirez from Eastern Michigan had a fantastic combine, 12 sacks, 2 forced fumbles, 38 solo tackles last year. The guy's 6'2", 242 pounds. He ran a 4.73 40. And yeah, just keep an eye out. I think he's going to be another late rounder that might surprise some people.
He's not a late rounder, whilst we're all getting overexcited over sleepers. He's not a late rounder, but I think where he's going to get drafted, he's a sleeper, is Zach Harrison from Ohio State. I think he's just been slept on as it is already. What is projected third round, and I just think whoever gets him, if he goes in the third round, is going to get an absolute monster steal.
I love him. We spoke briefly about him before we started the pod, and I absolutely love him. There's some things with Zach Harrison which will make Pete Carroll salivate. Just a couple of things. 6'6", 274 pounds, 4.4 40-yard dash. That is an animal, by the way. That is an absolute animal.
Call him the cheetah.
Honestly. 36 and a quarter inch arms. Enormous dude.
Ridiculous.
Yeah, honestly, and people are projecting him third, back of the second. Whoever gets him there is laughing. Absolutely. Laughing.
All right, well, that was our breakdown of the defensive line and edge prospects. I hope you all enjoyed that. We're going to get into some more in the next week or so with the linebackers and cornerback prospects all being broken down in separate episodes for you, so you've got plenty of content to choose from and to pick from heading into the draft. So I hope you've all enjoyed that one tonight, and then I look forward to reconvening with you all again as we talk about the linebacker prospects for the Seahawks. But for now, go Hawks.
Go Hawks.